Frankie Pentangelli sat alone in the dimly lit room, the weight of his decision pressing down on him like a tombstone. He had barely survived the Rosato brothers' ambush, crawling out of that bloody mess with nothing but his life and a bitter realization. Someone wanted him dead. And the whispers, the subtle nudges from Roth's men, had all pointed in one direction: Michael Corleone. The same Michael who was supposed to be his boss, his ally. The FBI had wasted no time. They made him an offer, a deal to flip, to testify before the Senate committee and put Michael Corleone away for good. All he had to do was open his mouth, tell them what he knew, and the Corleone dynasty would crumble. It was almost poetic. One signature, one statement, and the empire Michael had spent years building would be reduced to dust. It all went back to Hyman Roth. Frankie had seen it coming from miles away, smelled the rot beneath all the promises. He had told Michael, warned him, that Roth was not to be trusted, that his deal in Havana was a trap dressed up as an opportunity. But Michael insisted he saw the future, the long game, the empire beyond crime. Frankie saw something else, a betrayal waiting to happen. And when Michael ignored him, pushed ahead, left him out of the equation, it didn't sit right. Frankie was old school. Loyalty meant something. Respect meant something. And Michael, he had been treating him like an afterthought. So when the Rosato brothers tried to take him out, when he barely made it out alive, it wasn't hard to believe the whispers that maybe, just maybe, Michael had set him up. With the Senate breathing down his neck and the FBI eager to make history, Frankie's testimony wouldn't just put Michael away. It would decimate the entire Corleone family. There would be no Michael Corleone, no underworld empire, no legacy. The Corleones would be finished, their power dismantled piece by piece. Michael wouldn't just go to prison. His entire lineage would be erased from history. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about ending an era. For Michael, this was the highest stakes game he had ever played. He was facing not just the law, but an enemy who knew everything about him, an enemy who just months ago had been his own. Pentangelli was either going to break the law of the government or the law of the mafia. Frankie was locked down in an impenetrable fortress, an army base guarded around the clock by U.S. military personnel. There was no way in, no way out, no way to get close without triggering a national scandal. And even if Michael could reach him, even if he could whisper the right words in his ear, it wouldn't matter. Frankie had made up his mind. He was going to testify. Michael only had a short window before the hearing. He had to act fast. He had to ensure that Frankie Pentangelli either stayed silent or never made it to the stand. But most importantly, it had to seem like Michael Corleone had nothing to do with it. And then, the morning of the hearing, Frankie walked in, ready to speak. The cameras were rolling, the senators leaning in, waiting for the moment they could finally bury Michael Corleone. Then, out of the corner of his eye, Frankie saw something that made his breath catch. His brother, Don Vincenzo Pentangelli, straight from Sicily. He didn't say a word, he didn't have to. Frankie knew. One look, that was all it took. He sat down, looked at the senators, and suddenly, he didn't remember anything. The words he had rehearsed, the testimony he had prepared, it all vanished. He stammered, dodged questions, mumbled something about how the life people talked about in those stories didn't really exist. Michael never had to lift a finger. He had subdued his enemy with one single look. If you want to put your knowledge to the test, I've created a strategy quiz that will reveal your strengths, weaknesses, and the type of strategist you are. Think of it as a battlefield assessment before stepping into the war zone. You can access it here. Now, let's dive into the book that has shaped emperors, warlords, and CEOs alike. You don't always have to think about direct action. There's a much higher level that not many realize exists, let alone openly talk about. Here's what Master Sun Tzu says: "Ultimate excellence lies not in winning every battle, but in defeating the enemy without ever fighting. The highest form of warfare is to attack strategy itself." Most people assume war is about brute force. Who has the biggest army, the sharpest swords, the strongest shoulders? But the truth is, war is about control, not just control over land or resources, but control over perception, alliances, and the enemy's will to fight. Julius Caesar understood this better than anyone. His conquest of Gaul wasn't about crushing his enemies with overwhelming power. Well, maybe it was, but while decimating the tribes, he also focused on manipulating them into a position where they had already lost before they even knew it. He attacked their unity, their trust, their ability to organize. This is the highest level of strategy, where war is fought before swords are ever drawn. 1. Seeing the battlefield before it exists. The moment Caesar crossed into Gaul, he didn't see one nation like they were often perceived. Rather than seeing them as faraway barbarians, he saw hundreds of factions, rivalries, and blood feuds. He saw resentments buried deep and warlords who despised each other more than they feared Rome. The Gauls had the numbers, the warriors, the home field advantage, but they had one fatal weakness: they were divided. So, Caesar didn't need to conquer all of Gaul at once, he just needed to keep all of them from uniting against him. Instead of thinking about where to attack, he thought about how to weaken them from within. He played their tribal leaders against each other, offering protection to some while fueling distrust in others. He spread rumors, planting seeds of paranoia that certain factions were conspiring with Rome. He offered alliances that seemed beneficial in the short term, but in reality made Gaul dependent on Rome for survival. Before long, the Gallic tribes were fighting each other more than they were fighting Caesar. The divide and conquer, or divide et impera strategy, has ancient roots and was not invented by a single individual. Instead, it's evolved over a common military and political tactic, appearing throughout history as a method to control larger, more powerful enemies by fragmenting them into smaller, weaker factions. Before Caesar, one of the earliest known practitioners of this strategy was Philip II of Macedon, the father of Alexander the Great. Philip used divide and conquer to subdue the Greek city-states, playing them against one another to prevent unity. Instead of engaging all of Greece in open warfare, he formed strategic alliances with some states while undermining others. By the time Greece realized what was happening, Philip had already secured control, a strategy Alexander would later refine in his conquests. The Romans, masters of long-term strategic thinking, adopted and perfected this principle. Julius Caesar's conquest of Gaul is one of the most famous examples of this strategy in action. 2. Attacking the enemy's strategy, not just their armies. The easiest way to win a war is to never have to fight it at full strength. If you can weaken an enemy's alliances, break their confidence, or make them fight amongst themselves, you can defeat them without having to face them head-on. This is what separates armchair generals from conquerors. Most people go for the obvious move, the head-on attack, the brute force, but the mastermind doesn't attack the army, he attacks the strategy. This is why Caesar's campaign in Gaul was so devastating. He wasn't just a conqueror, he was a manipulator of the war itself. By the time the final battle at Alesia was fought, the Gauls were already defeated in every way that mattered. Their strongest leaders had turned on each other, their trust was shattered, their unity was destroyed. All Caesar had to do was let them collapse, and then deliver the final blow. And Caesar wasn't unique in this. Although he may be one of the first recorded examples to have used it so potently, he was far from the last. If you look at the most successful conquerors in history, you'll notice a pattern. They all understood that true dominance isn't just about brute force, but controlling the battlefield before the first strike is ever made. Even in mythology, during the Trojan War, we see the same principle at play. Dividing your enemies, breaking them into smaller, more manageable factions, and ensuring they are too weak to resist. This has always been the key to victory. 3. The Master's Playbook. How you apply this today. You don't have to be a Roman general to use divide and conquer in life. This principle applies to business, power, negotiation, and any form of competition. The highest level of control is not fighting harder, it's making sure that the fight is never fair to begin with. If you control the alliances, the environment, and the battlefield before the conflict even starts, you've already won. In business, you don't compete by attacking rivals head-on. You influence the market, shift alliances, and control perception so they never see the real threat coming. In negotiation, you don't argue directly. You plant doubt, introduce alternatives, and create pressures that make your opponent collapse from within. In power struggles, you don't fight every battle. You turn enemies against each other, control the flow of information, and weaken their ability to resist you. But can we make it even more practical? You can divide and conquer your daily challenges by breaking big tasks into smaller, manageable parts and planning your projects like a military campaign, knowing when to advance, when to change course, and where to allocate your best resources. Staying adaptable, anticipating obstacles, and eliminating any inefficiencies before they slow you down. Victory isn't about doing everything at once, it's about strategic execution. The best moves are the ones nobody realizes you've made until it's too late. The battle isn't won in the moment, it's won long before the first strike is ever made. That is the true art of war. An offer you can't refuse. If we talk about subduing your enemy, you can't not talk about Don Vito Corleone, the master of this strategy. Vito was a master of psychological warfare. The easiest example would be the whole Jack Woltz situation. Poor Khartoum had to pay with his, well, head. Vito utilized his reputation that lingered in the minds of those whose fate had been intertwined with his, whether through loyalty, fear, or necessity. Every whisper of his name carried the weight of past decisions, silent favors, and unspoken debts. His name and precedent remained even if he wasn't physically present, an unshakable force that dictated the outcomes in rooms he never stepped into. His influence wasn't just built on power, but on quiet understanding that defiance came with consequences and loyalty was always rewarded, and so he was able to counter potential rivals without even lifting a finger. Imagine you're in a small rural village. You wake up from the terrifying sound. The Great Khan and the Mongol horde are here. Now that's a terrifying thought. Even though you haven't seen them by mere association, you immediately know what they stand for and what they specialize in doing. It's quite a dark extreme, but let's uncover why. Genghis Khan, the founder and first great Khan of the Mongol Empire, built a reputation shaped by both his military might and the brutality associated with his conquests. As a result, he then utilized another form of indirect warfare, psychological domination, a tactic masterfully used by Genghis Khan. Instead of engaging in prolonged sieges or costly battles, he weaponized fear itself. His reputation for merciless destruction preceded him, spreading terror across entire regions. Cities, knowing the fate of those who resisted, often surrendered without a fight, offering tribute rather than facing total annihilation. This allowed the Mongols to expand rapidly with minimal resistance, proving that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the sword, it's the fear of its use. Hannibal's use of fake soldiers. But sometimes you might find yourself in the middle of a war. How do you subdue your enemy without fighting? Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general who had already humiliated the Romans at Trebia and Lake Trasimene, now found himself cornered. The Roman dictator Fabius Maximus, known as the Cunctator, the Delayer, had trapped Hannibal in the valley of Ager Falernus, cutting off all exits. The Romans believed they had finally contained their elusive foe. But Hannibal was never one to fight on his enemy's terms. Instead of attempting a desperate breakout, he did something unexpected. He turned emptiness into a weapon. As night fell, Hannibal ordered his men to gather thousands of oxen and tie bundles of brushwood to their horns. Then, with precise timing, they set the brushwood ablaze and drove the panicked animals up the mountain passes. The effect was instant chaos. To the Roman sentries, it appeared as if an entire Carthaginian army was ascending the mountains in retreat. Fabius's soldiers, convinced that Hannibal was making a desperate escape, rushed to intercept the fleeing enemy, abandoning their posts and guarding the valley's real exit. Meanwhile, the true Carthaginian army slipped through the now unguarded pass, unchallenged and intact. By dawn, Hannibal had vanished. The Romans were left baffled and humiliated, having been tricked into chasing fire and shadows. Interpretation and application. Hannibal's escape at Ager Falernus is a masterclass in using deception to deny an enemy a target. Rather than smashing through the Roman blockade, he let their own assumptions guide them into failure. He understood that fear and uncertainty were just as powerful as swords and spears. In warfare, a strong enemy expects confrontation. The key is to frustrate them by offering nothing solid to attack while creating the illusion of vulnerability. In business and politics, if rivals are watching you closely, misdirection can be a powerful tool. Make them react to false moves while you execute your real strategy elsewhere. In life, when others expect aggression, sometimes the best move is to be elusive, unpredictable, and indirect. Hannibal didn't just escape that night, he showed yet again that victory is not about brute force, but about controlling perception. The Romans had trapped themselves, not him. Principle breakdown. The essence of the art of war by Sun Tzu is winning without fighting. The greatest victory is the one that requires no battle. True power comes from intimidation, psychological manipulation, and positioning, not brute force. The most skilled leader makes his enemies submit before a war even begins. This is the essence of the art of war, to win by strategy, not by bloodshed. Michael Corleone did not defeat his enemies by outgunning them, he outthought them. He made them believe that they were in control, then flipped the game when it was too late for them to react. He kept his emotions hidden, spoke softly, and let fear do the work. When he finally made his move, it was swift and absolute. He only needed to make one lightning strike at the right angle at the right time to achieve what others take decades to do. But power isn't just about crushing enemies, it's also about turning them into allies. If you can make an opponent come to your side willingly, you win twice. The enemy is neutralized and your strength increases. Vito Corleone mastered this. He didn't rule with fear alone. He made people feel they owed him. He gave favors, knowing one day they would be repaid. Even further, he made them happy and excited to repay him. But those who resisted were, let's just say they were incentivized to change their minds. Power is the art of control. Win through influence, not force. Let others fight while you decide the outcome. Sun Tzu teaches that war is not just about combat, it's about mind games, influence, and manipulation. The best victories come from making the enemy believe resistance is futile or unnecessary. This can be done by causing confusion, creating fear, offering an illusion of security, or turning rivals into allies. The key is positioning yourself so that conflict never becomes necessary. See the problem before it arises, cut off threats before they take shape. If an enemy can't fight, he's already lost. The best way to defeat a rival is to make him believe that he's already been beaten. At its core, the art of war is about control of your opponent, your environment, and most importantly, yourself. A reckless leader fights blindly. A wise leader moves with patience, choosing the perfect moment to strike or making it unnecessary to strike at all. So there's why Sun Tzu says, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. How to master the art of war. The 13 Laws of Victory is the version of Sun Tzu you've been waiting for. It doesn't just explain the old ideas, it shows you exactly how to use them in real life. Each of the 13 laws gives you simple, clear steps to apply ancient war strategies right now. No fluff, no confusion, just straight-up advice you can use to think sharper, move smarter, and stay ahead of the game. It bridges the gap between knowing and doing, giving you the exact mental models, tools, and strategic moves to dominate your battlefield, whatever that may be. If the original felt too vague or hard to apply, this book finally makes it clear, practical, and powerful. Learn how you can win the game and be so far ahead of your competition you won't even be playing the same game.